Okay, so I am Chris Czaplak. I'm a Navy veteran. I am an attorney, and I'm a VA accredited one at that. Today, I'm going to talk about veterans benefits and what is available to the residents and how we can help unlock some of those and basically put them on a better footing. Uh, so we're going to talk about disability compensation, healthcare, you know, in particular presumptive conditions, because those are very helpful in unlocking the benefits. I'll explain more about that. Some of the legislation that's made it easier for veterans, especially those who served in the Middle East and the Gulf, and of course the process to go through with the VA, which is, as you can imagine, not easy.
No, it's not.
No, it is not. All right, so a little bit about me. I went to the Naval Academy right out of high school. Kind of a classic story. I grew up in Chicago. I'd never left Chicago, and I wanted to see the world. Started off as a submarine officer. Did a Western Pacific deployment. Loved being a junior officer on a submarine. Did not want to be a department head, XO or CO on a submarine, but I wanted to stay in the Navy. So I was looking for anything else I could do. There was an opportunity to go to law school on active duty. I kind of slipped through the cracks and got into that and spent the rest of my career as a JAG. This is key right here, this accreditation number. No one should be helping veterans unless they have an accreditation with the VA. We'll talk more about that as we come up there, but I want to flag that because that's going to be a recurring theme. All right, so disability compensation is probably the number one benefit that a veteran is eligible for after their service. It can range when someone gets out and they apply for disability compensation, they're going to get a percentage. So if you don't know this already, it ranges from 0 to 100, and they do some kind of alchemy that is very difficult to understand in calculating that rating. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. But if you have enough conditions that are severe, you can get significant tax-free monthly income. That can be incredibly important, especially to the residents, because as I'll get into later. But the first thing is applying for this benefit. It's the number one thing. And then the rating that comes with it also unlocks other benefits, whether it's healthcare, education, et cetera. So this can be, as little as $200 a month. It could be as high as $4,700, depending on if you go, 10% to 100. There are three things that are key to that, though: diagnosis, service connection, and current impact. Those are called the Kaluza factors. I try to minimize the legalese that's in here, but this is an important thing to discuss with anyone who is assisting the residents in trying to get their VA ratings and get their compensation. Current diagnosis. All right, so they've got to have a condition. They've got to have something that is wrong with them. There are a lot that they can claim. Musculoskeletal, upper respiratory, mental health, sinuses, joint pain, back pain. These are some of the more common categories. The ones that are the most impactful and the ones that I think would be the conditions that you would want to tease out are mental health, musculoskeletal, because those are typically chronic and never get better and can only be managed. And then upper respiratory, because there's a ton of new benefits under the PACT Act, and that usually is because our veterans, including myself, were in zones where they were inhaling toxic chemicals or particulate matter. In-service event. So usually that means you have to have qualifying service. To qualify as a veteran under the law, it's 90 days of active duty or more. And the characterization of service, this will be important as well, is that your service was other than dishonorable. Now, a lot of my time as a JAG was as a defense attorney, and I was dealing with administrative discharges at court-martial, and the typical ones you hear dishonorable discharge, bad conduct discharge. Honorable is the gold standard. That's the one that everybody wants to get. That's the one that most people do get when they come out of the service. But there could be general under honorable conditions and other than honorable. The VA, right? So that's all done by the DoD. And that is all specific to the services. They all have guidelines on administrative separation. The DoD has some overarching guidelines as well. The VA can make its own independent determination, and they are just looking to see that your service is other than dishonorable. What does that mean? Well, it depends, right? You can have an other than honorable discharge because you were convicted of multiple homicides out in town. That would be other than dishonorable. But you could have a bad conduct discharge from a special court martial for popping positive for marijuana, otherwise an exemplary service record, and the VA could determine that your service was other than dishonorable and you're eligible for benefits. When you are talking with residents, or when you have situations where someone is asking about this and they say, like, well, I have an OTH. And it's like, well, what do you have an OTH for? Well, I got stressed out after my deployment. I smoked pot, pop positive. I got booted out because, it was a bunch of hard asses on my board. Okay, all right. Well, if you were stressed out by a combat deployment, and all it was one incident, and otherwise you've got good conduct. The VA has history and past performance is no guarantee of future results, but the VA has allowed veterans to get their benefits, with the exception of the GI Bill that's very closely protected. They usually need to have an honorable. It's only under some very specific circumstances that they can get the GI Bill without an honorable. But all these other benefits that I'm going to touch on later are unlocked if you can get the VA to say other than dishonorable. And then nexus to service. So it's not just, hey, I was there and I got sick. Although there are now some presumptions where that situation applies. There's got to be something that happened on active duty or during a reserve drill or some otherwise affiliated with or associated with your service that resulted in the injury. So here's a perfect example. You got a Marine mortarman. They're, humping the gear for an 81 millimeter mortar. The thing is not small. It is difficult to move, and there's a lot of parts that weigh a lot. And they're taking them on 10, 12, 20-mile humps. You do that over and over and over again. How do you think that young Marine's back's going to feel? Pretty bad, right? Knees, pretty bad. Shoulders, pretty bad. That's nexus to service. So when that Marine is applying for disability and has been diagnosed with lower back pain, lumbar issues, knee issues, right? They've got a formal diagnosis. They've got something in their medical record, or they've got a doctor out in town diagnosing them. Now you've got the diagnosis, you've got the in-service event, and it's connected because it was part of my duties were humping the 81 millimeter mortar, and it sucked, and my back hurts, and my knee hurts, and I want disability compensation for that. There are other circumstances, right? Like you could be the Marine or sailor, soldier, airman, right? Could be on his way or her way to work on a motorcycle, gets hit by a car that runs a red light, lots of injuries, lots of treatment. Command finds that service member was in the line of duty when he or she was hit by a car. Boom, right? That accident could have happened to anybody, but because it happened on the way to work and the service member was not committing misconduct, meaning, wasn't drunk, was just trying to get to work, it's in the line of duty. The Navy, when I dealt with this, tended to be very lenient on line of duty determinations. And as long as there is no clear and convincing evidence of misconduct, that injury is presumed to be in the line of duty. If the veteran has that, they should claim it because they can establish the in-service event and the nexus. So that's another quick question. Like, and that's another question to ask is like, hey, was there ever a line of duty determination? Usually they'll say no, but if there is nothing saying it's not in the line of duty, it should qualify. So these are the three key steps that the veteran should be looking for when going and applying for disability compensation. So I talked about there are some presumptions. You can get a shortcut here with in-service event and nexus to service if there is a presumption. There are a lot of presumptions that are very factually specific and very, like, there are certain circumstances you have to meet to get those presumptions. But one of them is you've applied for disability compensation within a year of leaving active duty. There is a very heavy presumption that your conditions are service connected. But I've listed off a bunch of these. So let me go around the room and get a sense of here at Veterans Village. How many Vietnam veterans do we think are residents here?
I have the seniors, and we have a lot of them. But I have a few that just got here that told me they didn't even know anything about any service connection,
Okay.
any pensions, any
Any of that.
offerings. And so we have a benefits clinic that comes twice a month. And so I told both of them, you guys need to go. You need to put your claim in. And I kind of went through what their diagnosis is and their paperwork. And I'm like, you can claim for this and for this and for this. So trying to help them to get on the right path.
Yeah. Okay. So elderly, homeless veterans, among the unhoused that I see a lot of them are older. So those that served in Vietnam, those that would have had Agent Orange exposure, there's a couple of other conditions there's a couple other events that come with that. Anything with their breathing, anything with their sinuses, right? They're going to get a presumption. Gulf War, we heard a lot about Gulf War syndrome. No one knows what it really was. It could have been, who knows, right? They haven't definitively just figured that out yet, but that's the same thing. And of course, the younger population or the middle-aged population probably has Iraq, Afghanistan, something like that. The other one, and this is for Marines, maybe some Navy corpsmen, Camp Lejeune. So Camp Lejeune is the one that is in the news the most, but there are other bases that are going to have this. They were they were doing this longer than 1953 to 1987, but those are the dates that the Camp Lejeune Justice Act has identified. Any Marine that was at Camp Lejeune for 30 days or more was probably drinking water, showering, washing their hands, eating food that was cooked with water that had forever chemicals dumped into it. They were put in PFAS and PFOS and some of these others that they just don't dissolve. They don't go away. Your body is not designed to process it. Lots of upper respiratory issues, lots of breathing issues, mental health issues, cancers, kidney issues. All of those can manifest just because you were there drinking the water. My firm has about 300 Marines and their families that are filed claims just through the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, but we have a number of veterans that we represent who are also applying for VA disability compensation because of those same conditions. So there's something to understand. Like, you may have a resident, you may be working with somebody who's like, well, yeah, I got a law firm that filed my CLJA claim. Ask them, did you file for VA disability with that? Those are two separate columns, right? The government loves to stovepipe things, right? Everybody, those of us who served on active duty, we all know that, like, hey, this is my lane and then this is your lane and we don't cross, right? That's what the Camp Lejeune Justice Act and that's what VA disability compensation are. So if someone has if someone has an active lawsuit, the filing deadline is closed, so they can't file and sue the government. But if they do have a lawsuit, that will have no effect whatsoever on their VA benefits, on their VA compensation. And so that's going to be, again, another opportunity for them to get some tax-free compensation and to get a rating that's going to unlock these benefits. The more the merrier. If anybody wants to, I mean, it's a little tight, but no, this is for anybody who could benefit from the knowledge. So the key with the presumption is that you don't need to prove that something in your service caused it. All right. Part of why those presumptions exist is the PACT Act. The PACT Act, I mean, it's an acronym. It's, you know, because the Congress likes to have these real creative names for the bills. But it is the one that made toxic exposure and burn pits, particulate matter, all that stuff now easier to show, because a lot of veterans were coming back from the Gulf. A lot of veterans who served in Vietnam were having these issues, and the VA was just denying all of it. If you know, now that the PACT Act exists, all of these things have opened up. And I'm going to have, for those who want to take some pictures, the next couple slides are going to be the ones. All right, so here is the map, and there's another one that's very similar. This is going to be, if you were here in any of these zones, you are under the PACT Act, you're going to qualify for toxic exposure presumptions.
The purple or the orange?
So the purple, and here I got, all right, so presumed toxic exposure, let me get this up. So if you see here, right, this might actually be the better one to take because you're going to get this. This is presumed toxic exposure. Purple is going to be after August 2nd, 1990. So that's going to be Gulf War.
After?
August 2nd, 1990. So that's when Desert Shield started. That's when the 82nd Airborne flew into Saudi Arabia, and then, you know, 7 Corps and 5 Corps and Marines started setting up in Saudi.
Question.
Yeah.
So do they apply through the Service Connection? I have a client that was in Persian Gulf,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't know which. He's one of the ones that told me he didn't know anything about the benefits.
Yeah.
I'm trying to explain it, but does he also apply for Service Connection under the Persian Gulf Syndrome bill?
Yeah. So what that will do, and here, please have a seat. Yeah, no problem. All right. So the disability claim will be one claim.
Okay.
Where this, so the purple for Gulf War, and then the purple and the orange is going to be OIF and OEF. And that's going to be just because we had a bigger footprint for Iraqi freedom and enduring freedom. And that's going to be after September 11th, 2011. The next one, does anyone else need to take a picture of this before we? All right.
Is there any way that you can email it to us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, so this same dates, right? Colors are the same. So purple for Gulf War, and then purple and orange for OIF, OEF. This is the burn pit. This is particulate matter, right? So we lost Egypt. We lost some of the other zones, right? But this is where we know that service members were inhaling fumes from burn pits. That's the big one for particulate matter.
Regardless whether he was on land or not?
Yep. So in my service as a JAG, I got to spend some lovely time in this little desert island here called Bahrain. Oh yeah. Lovely place.
I love it. I had a great time.
Guess what the winds bring over?
All the toxins?
All the toxins. If you're on a destroyer, an aircraft carrier, or an amphib in the Persian Gulf, guess what the wind is blowing across your deck? The toxins, right? And you can see that the zone extends into, blue water. So even if you are out deployed and then you are in, deep water Navy deployments, like off the coast, you see nothing, right? You're still presumed to have been exposed because because of it's a combination of how dangerous those chemicals are and how long they persist, and then just the weather and how they will just continue out and pretty far out.
Is there a cutoff date for that?
So the cut, you'll see some of that in a slide coming up, but that one, folks were in Afghanistan. Hey, come on in. Folks were in Afghanistan until, when was the withdrawal? 2022? 21? Yeah. All right. So you're probably going to be seeing folks that served over in Afghanistan that get this presumption for a long time. We still have people in Iraq, right? And so even if there's a cutoff, you can still make the argument, but no, man, I was there. They were still burning. The pits were still burning. Some of the other unique ones, and this is where you see a lot of these dates, are going to be Yankee Station and Dixie Station in Vietnam. So you work on the flight deck on the USS Hancock, launching airstrikes for, linebacker 1 and 2. Pretty far off the coast, they still are presuming that you got Agent Orange exposure or other toxic exposure. Korean DMZ, you see, you've got a lot, you've got a narrower window. This one is real specific, but there are more people than we probably think that qualify for this. If you worked anywhere near the planes that spread Agent Orange, it's on you, automatic. Any of these bases, especially the air bases in Thailand, Guam, probably not going to see a lot of people at Johnson Atoll, but that's where we used to test atomic weapons and nuclear weapons, right? And that one is unique, but the radiation exposure is significant. Here's an example of some of these presumed conditions. These, you kind of have to Google each one. These are very specific ones, but some of the things that, psychoses, right? You're going to see a lot in the Campbell's Junior Justice Act. It's neurological effects, but anxiety, PTSD. You're more prone to suffer from PTSD because of toxic exposure. You are more prone to have neurological issues, tingling in your fingers, the inability to have your limbs respond when you want them to because of toxic exposure. You are going to have diabetes, cirrhosis of the liver. You've got a number of these that are, a number of these are cancer, a number of these are upper respiratory, tuberculosis, stuff that there's a lot of nasty stuff that people suffer from, and the toxic exposure is the main cause.
Excuse me, I have
Go
a
ahead.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Toxic exposure, would that include different chemicals and bases such as I don't know.
So earlier in the talk, we were talking about Camp Lejeune, and that, I'm glad you brought that up, because Camp Lejeune is not the only place where they were dumping forever chemicals into the water. The other one that's big in the news is there are missile silos, the old Minuteman, Peacekeeper, all those missiles. Those silos were built with the forever chemicals and asbestos. And for the majority of the Cold War, the missileers were living in those silos, breathing in those toxic chemicals, drinking the water where those toxic chemicals were circulating in the pipes, all that stuff, right? And so they're now suffering from all the same conditions that are presumed from Camp Lejeune. Any naval air station is going to have the same thing, plus all the jet fuel. Now, wait, what was your service?
I was in the Navy. I was Carl Vinson.
Okay. So what was your rate?
I was ABE.
Okay. All right.
Catapult.
Yeah. So. Okay, so you're on flight deck a lot?
Yes.
Okay.
And I was in between the flight deck or in the catapult.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to use, if you are okay with this, because I'm going to back up a second. I'm going to go to all right, so for those of us who joined this late, these are the three things you got to show to qualify for disability compensation. So let's say, all right, do you have any ringing in your ears? Hard of hearing?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Hearing loss, all right? So if you don't have a diagnosis for that, we just got to find a doctor who's going to test you out. One of the things all right, so here's one of the hacks. Tinnitus, the ringing in the ears, you can't test for it. It's self-reported. It is either a 0% or a 10%, depending on the severity. As long as you can credibly say, I have ringing in my ears, sometimes it is so distracting that I have to stop what I'm doing so that I can let the ringing pass because I can't concentrate on my task, right? You pretty much established through that statement that you have a 10% rating. If you have a 10% rating, that's around $200 a month, tax-free. And oh, by the way, all the other benefits we're going to get to are now unlocked because you're a disabled veteran. So, how's your back? How's your knees?
I have this actually. I had something happen as far as this. I was pushed down the stairs on ships and it messed up my metatarsal and my shoulder.
Okay, is that in your service treatment records, medical records at all?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I need to order that.
Maybe not, right? Okay, so again, current diagnosis, in-service event because you fell on the ship. Nexus to service, you were doing your job. You were on the ship. That is another qualifying, that's another condition to qualify. These are some easy conversations to have. It's like, hey, is your back hurt? Your knees hurt? How's your hearing, right? There are some harder conversations though, and you shouldn't be afraid to have them. And that would be, do you have nightmares? Are you hypervigilant? Are you always looking over your shoulder? Do you think that people around you are a danger? Do you feel threatened when you're just in public, right? PTSD, right? Hypervigilance is a big one. Do you have problems sleeping at night? All of that stuff. That is, those are the harder conversations to have. The thing that I have found is helpful in having those conversations is to say, I'm asking you these questions because there are so many other people that suffer from this. Yeah, and your service is the reason you have this, right? And one of the things that is important about understanding what veteran benefits for and what disability compensation is that everybody who serves, whether you are at the tip of the spear or the shaft of the spear, is going to have wear and tear on your tires. Military service is challenging. To a degree, everyone is in danger. Even if you're pushing papers at headquarters, if you were pushing papers at headquarters in Kabul or Kandahar, you were probably getting mortared at the same time. If you are on a ship, very loud noises, gasoline and diesel in the air. The food sucks and it's probably being cooked with stuff that has nasty chemicals. And all of that is just incident to what you doing your job. And you're also, when you're serving, you're giving up an opportunity to get really good at a civilian career. Now, the military gives you a lot of great qualities. It gives you a lot of great experience. There are a lot of really good, intangible things that military service does, but it does not set you up to be a plumber. It does not set you up to be a teacher. It does not set you up to be an investment banker. It doesn't set you up to be a radiologist, unless that was your rating or unless that was your specific job in the Navy, right? But at some point, everyone has to leave the service, and they leave the service with some dents and some bruises and some wear and tear on the tread. And the VA disability compensation is a way to sort of level the playing field for you. So I find a lot of people come to me after 10 to 15 years having been in the civilian world, and they are like, I didn't think I was disabled, but now, enough people have told me that I should think about this, right? Disability compensation is just what the government has called it. It does not, there is no stigma to applying for this. So that is something like, it is a benefit that you have earned. It is not a handout. And that is a key thing. I think there's a lot of pride. We all come from a culture where you suck it up for years. It's like, hey, I don't need to go to the doc. I can tough it out, right? And I'm a team player, and I don't need help, right? But this is not something that is available for people because, you're supposed to feel sorry for yourself. It's a benefit that has been earned. And that's another key thing to think. So let me get caught back up. So once you've got this rating and you've got that compensation coming in, there's other things you can do. Any service-connected condition qualifies for VA healthcare. And under certain circumstances, anything, as long as you are a disabled veteran, it will be treated by the VA. And healthcare is one of the most expensive things that people deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so the ability to get that at low cost or for free is huge, especially when you are struggling with mental health. If you have substance abuse issues, if you have chronic conditions, right? This is going to help you get through the day. This is going to help you get current. This is going to help you manage those conditions. And then I talked about this earlier, but one of the things that sort of, I think, is disproportionately affects veterans who are unhoused, veterans who are homeless, is that they do not have the honorable discharge. And when I was representing sailors and Marines who were facing administrative discharge, one of the things I said was, if you give this guy an OTH for popping positive, you are guaranteeing that he is going to be a ward of the state the rest of his life. Because the stigma of an OTH is significant. It will impact employment, and it will impact education opportunities, and that creates this death spiral that will lead people to this facility, right? If they're lucky. So the VA makes its own decision about service. And so for those who joined us, you have honorable, general under honorable conditions, other than honorable, bad conduct, dishonorable discharge, and officers can get dismissal, which is dishonorable. All of those have different benefits attached to it. The difference between general and under honorable and honorable is the GI Bill. That's the only one. Other than honorable, a lot of it disqualifies you. But you can go to the VA and you can say, yes, this veteran has an other than honorable discharge, but it was because he was stressed out from PTSD from a combat deployment and positive for marijuana while he was self-medicating because his command did nothing. Otherwise, he has an exemplary service record. And the VA can look at it and say, well, that service is other than dishonorable. Now you can have your benefits. And so that is something that, I hit on it earlier. We had some people join us. So, but I don't think there's any harm in emphasizing that again. That is so key, is to get the VA to characterize your service. Because of this standard, because the VA standard is other than dishonorable, it is so much easier to unlock your benefits through the VA than to try to go get a discharge upgrade through the DoD. Because the discharge review boards and the Board for Correction of Military Records, the Board for Correction of Naval Records, they are looking for any reason to deny that petition. The Army tends to be the most generous one, and they'll upgrade discharges about 40% of the time. The Navy and Marine Corps will upgrade about 4%. But the VA is a totally different standard. It's a totally different group of people evaluating it, and it's a much lighter lift to get your characterization upgraded through the VA. Now, it won't change your DD-214, but it will give you the benefits. So, how to file? Well, it is not easy, and that is something that you shouldn't be surprised. It's the government. In an ideal world, you get out of the military and you get a copy of your service treatment records, you get a copy of your service records, you have everything organized, and you file for disability. Before you actually get discharged, the VA has a benefits determination of discharge program where you'll get that rating right out the gate. And then if you don't like it, you can supplement your claim later, you can appeal. There's a whole process for it, right? But most people don't do that. And you are finding that you want to get a rating, you want to access these benefits. You've been out 10 years, you've been out 15 years. What am I going to do? So the National Archives is the first place to start, where you can collect your records. Veteran service organizations, law firms like ours, we can also hunt down those records. So VFW, DAV, those groups, they're also very proficient in that. But the government is supposed to keep all of that stuff. And depending on how long you've been out will depend on where you go to get it. But they're there. And there are resources available to you for people who are much better suited to go track those down. When you file the claim, the thing you should do first is file an intent to file, because that starts your clock. So if you were to say you do an intent to file today, July 16th or 17th, 17th. All right. So if you do an intent to file today, July 17th is your date of when you would be eligible. You go and you get your records, you put everything together, you get your diagnoses, you assemble the package, you put that initial claim for benefits in. VA does its thing, comes back and it says, hey, we're going to give you 30%. All right, 30%, not bad. But it took them 8 months to do that. Well, all the money that you should have been paid from July 17th to that date, 8 months later, is now owed to you as back pay. So you're going to get a nice lump sum, tax-free. But let's say that in the list, in their initial determination letter, they gave you 30% for 4 conditions you claimed, but you got another 8 that they denied or they zeroed out. You can look at that and you can say, did I have enough in there? Well, I can file a supplemental claim. Here, I think this next one better shows that. So we did that, right? And the reason it takes so long is that they're going to send you to the doctor. So even if you don't have, so you're talking about some of the stuff you don't know if it's in your medical record or not, doesn't necessarily matter. Because the VA will have a contractor, maybe, probably a nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, doctor who retired from the military and is just doing this to pay the greens fees so they can go golfing. That was literally the guy that evaluated me. They're going to send you for an exam. That can satisfy your diagnosis. Make the decision. You don't like the decision. That 8 those 8 conditions that they denied. You can supplement it if there's not enough evidence, or if man, this is perfect. I have a PACT Act presumption. I got all the records. The doc even said that this was caused by my deployment. You can take it to the board for Veteran Appeals. That process can add another 6 months to a year and a half, especially if you're appealing to the board. But that July 17th date is still your date. So you go from 30 to 60, that jump from 30 to 60, that's going to go back to July. You can keep doing this over and over again until you get to 100. Now you got to have the conditions to justify that, right? So if you only serve 4 years, it's going to be harder to get to 100. You serve 20 years, there's probably a lot more wrong with you that you've just accumulated conditions, and there's just more to work with that way. But depending on how severe it is, will depend on how high that rating is going to be, right? So one thing, if you are going to a CMP exam, you have to go in there with the mindset of this is the worst I've ever felt in my life. The last thing you can say, or the worst thing you can say, is I feel fine. Mm-hmm. The doc will go, hey, how you feeling today? Oh, I feel good. Right? Oh, okay. Right. You don't know who you're going to get. That's one of the problems, right? At the decision level and at the CMP exam level, you don't know who you're going to get. You might have someone who's very sympathetic. And it's like, look, I'm here to help you out. You might get someone who is on team VA. It's like, well, I got to make sure that, this is as low as possible because, I got to protect the taxpayer, right? Which is not actually what their job is. They're there to just render a medical opinion, but you will get people like that. In fact, I was talking to a client yesterday. He went in and he said, I'm here for an exam on these conditions, and the doctor did nothing and wrote up not service connected. 5 minutes with that guy. And, now we're appealing it. Now we're supplementing it. We're demanding another exam from a different examiner. So that's why when you go in there, you got to go in there with the mindset of, this is the worst I've ever felt in my life. Because they need to hear that. They need to hear about your shoulder. They need to hear about your foot. They need to hear about your joints. They need to hear about your hearing loss. And they need to know how that affects you.
One more thing. What about I heard something about an AFFF thing. What was it about?
So that's part of the toxic exposure.
Okay.
Firefighter, yeah. So if you probably got exposed to it in the DC trainer.
I got exposed to it in Great Lakes.
In Great Lakes, yeah. That has forever chemicals in it. That's another one. So if you have upper respiratory, there's a whole long list. I'll show it to you. There's a whole long list of conditions that you are presumed to have, that are presumed to be service connected because you got exposed to those chemicals. So, but good question. Yeah, I mean, you do it enough of that chlorine gas, it's gonna do a number on you. I know I did. I went through the gas chamber and as training, and I came out. It was like there's a picture of 21-year-old Chris just like doing this, snotting everywhere, sweating. But I'll tell you, like, it was miserable. My sinuses have never been that clear in my life. I wouldn't recommend it if you have allergies, but man, that was, whew. But for certain MOSs, for certain ratings, you're going to be going through that over and over again. And the reason it sucks is because your body's not meant to breathe that in. So at all. All right. So I talked a lot about how you get the rating, how you get the compensation. This is what it unlocks. So for residents here, the rating itself helps, right? Because it's going to give you some tax-free compensation. But that can unlock a whole bunch of other things. So there's a few on the housing assistance side, right? Some of these benefits require you to show income. And even if it's just $200 a month, Section 8 housing now opens up. And because it's disability and it's tax-free, it is not going to count against you for income-based benefits. So you kind of get this double, you kind of get this double benefit of it. There are grants out there. There are state vouchers. The one thing that also helps, right? So if you're going to get a house, right, you're going to have to pay for it. So you're going to need employment, right? So GI Bill is one. If you may have the Montgomery GI Bill, you may have the forever post 9/11 GI Bill, but if you don't have one of those, you used it up, it's expired, Voc Rehab never goes away. And Voc Rehab is where you go in, you say, I cannot get a job based on the experience that I have in the military. I need to be retrained. And if you have found your way to Veterans Village, you probably have a justification for Voc Rehab. And it will train you to do something else. It can get you into the trades. It can get you, a new skill set, and it's paid for by the government. There's another one called the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. This one is important because it gives you a little something extra to tell a potential employer in a job interview. If you are a disabled veteran and you have been homeless, and there's different criteria, 90 days, 180 days, etc. Those two categories can get your new job up to $9,600 in tax credits. And there's some state benefits as well to the employer. It gives you an edge over somebody else who's similarly qualified. So if you go through Voc Rehab and you get trained, and now you've got your electrician's license, and now you're going to go work as a lineman at SDG&E. You can tell them, hey, take me over the other guy because you're going to get a tax credit if you hire me. And that's going to help, right? Because once you have the employment makes the housing better. The housing can help make the employment better because you're just in a more comfortable situation. So we talked about the downward spiral from the OTH. Voc Rehab and the Work Opportunity Tax Credit and Section 8 and disability compensation creates the upward spiral and gets you back to where you should be. There's another thing, it's called a CalVet fee waiver. It's free tuition. It's for dependents. It is probably the best California benefit out there because it's if you have a 0% rating, and those exist, they're placeholders. It basically says, yes, you have this. Tinnitus is an example, right? Yeah, you have ringing ears, but it has no impact on you. It's not severe. You get 0. It's a placeholder because if it gets worse, right, the VA knows, oh yes, but this is a service-connected condition, so we do have to treat you. But any 0% gets you this fee waiver, but it's for your dependents. So I want to put this in your head. If you have kids and you've lost connection with them, but you found housing, you found employment, you've got income, you're back on your feet, this is a perfect way to reconnect, right? But let's say you get your housing, you get your employment, you're on your feet, you meet someone, you start a family, you live in the American dream, your kids can go to school in-state. So San Diego State, UCSD, UCLA, Berkeley for free. Books, room, and board, you still got to pay for it. But if you get to 100%, your kids also get a stipend. So they get $1,500 a month. Yep. So how do you get this started, right? It's a lot. I mean, this is a lot to get to put on your plate, right? I did it after 20 years in the Navy, 11 of which were as an attorney. And I found it challenging to do myself. And I needed help. I had DAV go look at the records that I had, and they read them and they organized them, and they basically made me a table of contents to tell me all the conditions and where they were in my medical records. I then did the whole initial claim talking about why each one was service connected, but I still needed their help, right? So you're not alone. There are people who will do this. I talked about the VSOs. Up here, at the beginning of the presentation, I showed you my accreditation number. This is important. It's important to understand. It's also going to be important when I talk about what I'm also here to do as a resource. You should never pay someone up front to help you with this. Those are called claim sharks. They call themselves consultants. They'll say that they're offering educational benefits and coaching, but they can charge you anywhere from $1,200 to $5,000 up front, and they're not allowed to do that. The way that the law is written, no one can charge you for your initial claim, at least not directly. Lawyers can get paid by nonprofits. Claims agents can get paid by nonprofits. They can be employed by nonprofits. That's what the claims agents and the claims reps at DAV and VFW are, right? They're on salary and they're there to help. But no one is allowed to charge a veteran directly for their initial claim. So if you've never applied for any of your benefits, there are free resources out there and no one is charging you anyways. Do not fall prey to a claim shark. The other thing, the accredited means that all of us have been vetted by the VA. So we go through a process, we get background checks, we have to show that if we're lawyers, we have to show that we are in good standing with our state bars. We have to go and we have to take lots of PowerPoint training after we've been approved before we can begin representing veterans. And it is if you're going with someone who has an accreditation number, that means that they are in good standing with the VA. They have been trained by the VA. They are familiar enough with the process that they can actually help you, instead of some dude who has slick videos on YouTube talking about all the resources available and what he can do for you. Get you 100% of your money back, whatever, right? My firm specifically, I'll give you a little background on us. So we're all veterans. We all were looking for something more meaningful. When I got out of the Navy, like a lot of people who get out of the military, I'm like, forget the government. I'm not working for the DOD again. I'm not working for the federal government. I'm not working for a big organization. I'm going to be my own boss. I'm going to go do something, lean and small, and then you start to get nostalgic. You start to miss the team. You miss the camaraderie. And I found that in private practice, more often than not, my favorite clients were veterans. And my partner and I connected. This is Nick. And we had a lot of things lined up. We were looking for something that's more purpose-driven. And it started helping out people in Camp Lejeune because there's a lot of exploitation there. But helping veterans get the benefits they've earned has been the next best thing for me than the coolest things I did on active duty. And one of the things that I wanted to do for a long time was help out at Veterans Village. I got to meet Akila, I got to meet Elise Fernebach, and when I was doing corporate law and private practice, I didn't know what I was like, I don't know what I can do, right? But now that we are have a veteran-focused firm, it's like, hey guys, I finally figured it out. I know how I can help out. All right, we will take on the initial claim pro bono for any VVSD resident who needs it. right? Now we're going to be limited in how many we can take at once. Yeah. We can onboard about 10 at a time because we got to make sure that these things happen quickly and expeditiously. But this is what gets us up in the morning and gets us excited to come to work, is helping people here in this room, helping anyone really, you know. Yeah, someone who comes to me and says, "Man, I've been out of the Marine Corps for 15 years, and yeah, my wife keeps telling me I need to do this, and now that I have kids, I think I need to figure this out." It's like, yeah, man, you earned it. And so this system is tough, and it is it is hard to navigate. I'm happy to be here as a resource to help people navigate. So that's my spiel in a nutshell. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to talk to any of the.
May I just get some more cards before I go?
Oh, for sure. Here, I'll tell you what. I'll just leave the stack. All right, I'm gonna go with him for a second, and I'll come back to you if you're okay with that. Go ahead.